Hey guys, yeah, another reading vlog for you, although this time featuring a Crash t-shirt rather than pyjamas. This time it's Lord of the Fly Fest by Goldie Moldovsky, I think is how you pronounce her name. This is my first book by the author. I know she's written a few, like there was big hype over Kill the Boy Band and No Good Deed, I think it was. So I'm interested because people seem to either love them or hate them. But yeah, don't know much about it. I know she writes sort of horror-esque books. And there is another one I'm interested of hers that came out recently, I think, the Mary Shelley Club. Yeah, don't know anything about it. Managed to get on a blog tour for it, so we're gonna read it. To Lord of the Fly Fest is literally the opening to Lord of the Flies, minus the plane crash, add in really exclusive music festival on a tropical island. So we're introduced to our main character Raffi, who has spent literally her life savings to go to this music festival on this secluded tropical island called Flyfest. As of a lot of other people who've paid a lot more. But when she turns up there with everyone else, there's no one there, there's no sign of any festival. And they're kind of starting to think it must be this one big scam. She does end up talking to a tech person called Peggy, and they kind of pinpoint Raffi as main person for sorting everyone else out, because we've got some very hysterical rich people. They're acting like toddlers. She ends up going to check out the island with an influencer called Jack and a musician called River. And she was investigating River for her podcast because his girlfriend recently went missing. We don't know much surrounding that yet, but she wanted to interview him and stuff, and now she's traipsing around the island with him. They do end up coming across a shipping container with what they think is their luggage, but it's not. But we don't know what's actually in the container right now. So yeah, I'm getting really, really strong Lord of the Flies vibes. With some potential murder mystery horror elements. I'm not sure where it's going yet. But I'll check back in about the quarter mark. So I hit the quarter mark in the novel. And it's really strange. There's not a lot happening at this point. They've been on the island one day and one night. And Raffi is convinced that no one is looking for him because there was no boat that turned up that morning. even though a lot of the bands and artists performing at the festival, we were informed it was cancelled because we know River was. He just got the message too late. He was already there. Yeah, and there's a couple of other smaller plot lines going on, like Raffi is trying to create some form of order and control, and it's not really working. Peggy is trying to rig up some internet contraption. There's a lot of small things going on, but nothing major really. I was not pleased by the fact that Raffi seems to take the moral high ground with all of the influencers, calling them stupid and narrow-minded and self-centered. When she's doing a very, very similar thing, like the only reason she was at Flyfest to begin with was to interview River about his first girlfriend Tracy going missing, and she's got this conspiracy theory in her head that he killed her, and she's trying to get an interview with him to prove it. So she is there for the same reason as everyone else, to further her own podcast and her own platform at the expense of others. So I didn't really like that. But yeah, I'll check in about the halfway mark. Halfway through Lord of the Flyfest now, and I'm just not really getting what the author was trying to go for. Like, I just don't get it. There's weird stuff going on, but Raffi doesn't have any sort of evidence or sound reasoning bar her own theories. So her kind of theory is right now that River killed his first girlfriend Tracy, that he's got something to do with the disappearance of Sierra from the island, and potentially he might have gotten rid of his current girlfriend Hella Badid. But here's where things get weird. It's Raffi who started the rumour that Hella was on the island as she was planning to be, and the only sort of evidence she's got is some slightly shifty behaviour from River, but you could also put this down to him being the only proper celebrity on the island, and he could be, just fooling around with one of the girls and doesn't want to get caught because he's got a girlfriend waiting back in the real world. So there's no real evidence about it. Raffi's just got this feeling, and she's building theories and making decisions based on these feelings. And even when she's talking to Peggy about them, she can't convince her. Plus now it's gotten to the point where Peggy is Wi-Fi overlord, and she wants to stay on the island indefinitely because everyone's pretending they're in bloody paradise. So things are just really strange. I have no idea what the author is trying to do, apart from making some sort of social commentary on social media and the amount of times we spend on the internet and on our phones. It just doesn't seem to make any sense. Being as it's a pretty short book, I am going to continue. And obviously I'll check in at the 3/4 mark when I've finished. But unless Modolsky starts tying this together somehow, it just seems really disjointed and kind of weird. And I'm not sure how I feel about it, honestly. Flyfest now, and I still have absolutely no idea what's going on. But a cult mind has seemed to have erupted, especially now since almost everyone believes that Hela is on the island and the festival is still happening. Most people have written off Sierra's disappearance as the fact she's gained admission to the festival because she was worthy, and they have to be their most perfect selves to gain entry themselves. So they start doing some really weird shit. Like, really weird. And Raffi can't figure out why, even though she is the one that started the rumour. Throughout all this, River is adamant that Hela isn't on the island and that there's no way she possibly could be. But when he, Jack, and Raffi go into the jungle, because several people have claimed to have heard Hela, or a few people have even claimed to have seen her, they come across the half-built stage where the festival would have taken place, and Raffi's questioning, like, why was it abandoned? Like, especially so soon. Was it they just got behind on scheduling because they could have pushed it back? And she's having all these questions when all three of them do hear Hela's voice. Now, I firmly believe this is a recording or a video that would have been playing when people were arriving at the festival. And River sort of confirms this when he says to Raffi on the beach that night that he knows where Hela is. He knows exactly where she is, and it's not there. But he refuses to tell anyone where Hela actually is and what she's doing, even though it could stop all this madness and they could go home. Because most of the people on the island, despite how weird their lives are content with their lives. The only one that's going against the flow, really, is Raffi, and you could say to a certain extent River, but primarily Raffi. She wants to go home. She wants to leave the island, and no one else really does. So she's stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I have no idea how the book is going to end. Flyfest. Yeah, honestly, it was like underwhelming for me. I get the kind of point the author was trying to make with the story about, social media use and the influence your words have on other people, especially if they're paying attention to you, which is something I really appreciate as a message. But all that kind of stuff went down in the last 30-40 pages. So I read like 270-ish pages of absolutely nothing happening. Like, maybe if it had been like more Lord of the Flies, where there are real consequences for characters, where characters die, characters get injured, there are major consequences for those characters at the end of the novel. There aren't really for these characters. Like, yes, there's lawsuits and stuff like that, but there's no real consequences for their actions. Jack, especially the way his character developed and the twists his particular arc took, should have had real world consequences, and they didn't. So it just kind of felt like we read the whole book for nothing. There was no real payoff. There was some tension and build up in places, but it didn't lead to anything. So, like, purely because it was an entertaining read, and it was very easy to read, and there were certain characters, like River, who I really liked. The book is only going to get a 3.25 stars from me. It was very middle of the road, very meh. Considering what I've heard about Goldie Moldovsky's other books, I'm probably going to give at least one other a try. I know back in the day there was a lot of hype around Killed the Boy Band and No Good Deed, but I have heard a lot of good things about the Mary Shelley Sub, so I'm probably going to try that one. And if that one doesn't work for me, then I know the author's probably not going to work for me. Most authors I only need to give it 1, maybe 2 books, and I'll know if they work for me or not. But yeah, this one just, it felt like a major flop, unfortunately. But I will have lots of spoilers available in my blog post if you want to check that out, and it will be linked down below. Thanks, guys.